Welcome to DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, so let's get started. Welcome to our first episode on DFW Running Talk. I am Chris Detzel, and today I have a special guest, Javier. Javier, how are you?
Hey, Chris, good. How are you? Thanks for having me on this. I appreciate it, and it's exciting.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, man, and I was really excited that you said, "Hey, yeah, let's do this." We're both into running. I see you a lot at the track, and then when we do hills and things like that, and so you've always been an interesting runner to me. You've accomplished a lot within the running stuff. So I'd love to get to know you a little bit. Tell me about you, your running, all this kind of stuff.
I had been running for a little under 10 years, which is a little crazy to me when I think about it, because I feel like I just started running yesterday, and I feel like up until a few years ago, I still called myself a baby runner. I'm very much not a baby runner. I'm
You're not.
salty and jaded at this point, but here we are. And my bones definitely feel the 10 years of running after a while, for sure. But no, local DFW runner. Been doing this for about 10 years. Recently started coaching about a year ago or so, and it's been quite the adventure since. I'm pretty heavily involved in the running community, a fixture in the White Rock Running Co-op, and I bounce around with all the different running groups and check out to see what works and what doesn't for all the groups around town.
I've been running for probably since I was 37, so 13 years, pretty consistently for the most part. I used to be a runner back when I was a teenager and all that, did cross country and did in a very slight way at a community college. And so I certainly understand where you are and certainly been in the DFW area running a lot myself. We all have a story to tell when you think about it. And for me, I know I have a story that got me back into running. I was like, I got to do this for my health and all this other stuff. And it's like, I'm curious to understand what got you into running, and then, let's go from there.
Yes, definitely was not a runner in high school or college or anything along those lines. I was I guess, not midlife crisis runner, but about mid-30s, I was introduced to running a 5K with the promise of beer at the end of the finish line. So
There's always an
friends,
incentive.
had friends that dragged me into running. I was not expecting to enjoy it quite as much as I did, but back in 2015, I think I ran the Plano Balloon Fest was my first 5K. And I used that as a training run for my very first goal 5K, which is the RAR 5K back in 2015 also. So I jumped on the couch to 5K bandwagon and ran the first 5K. Didn't do too bad my first one. I was like, all right, well, I'm not too bad at this.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another with running. You run a 10K, you run a half, and next thing you know, you're signed up for a full marathon a little over a year later, which is wild.
Well, that's interesting. So there wasn't something there that said, "Hey, I need to really start thinking about my health." It was just, "Hey, there's some beer, and okay, let's go do some more."
I've been big into the gym for years before that, and relative fitness, and I would do cardio at the gym and whatnot, but I was never a runner. I think I tried couch to 5K years prior to that, like maybe 6 or 7, and I never stuck with it. And then just having friends that were really into it really helped push me along.
Then what kind of kept you going? I mean, you mentioned that you did a few 5Ks and stuff, but for me, it's always about a community, and it's hard for me to do something by myself all the time, right? Some people really like that, but for me, what kind of kept you focused and going? Guys, anyway, but
Community for sure. In the beginning, a lot of it was really just training by myself and training with some friends the same friends that dragged me into running. And then little by little, I lived in Louisville at the time, so I was a little bit further north, and there wasn't really a big running community presence there at the time. So a lot of my training was solo, and I would actually, in the beginning, drive up to Dallas to run with the WRC, my Saturday long runs, and that kind of started it. That was my inroads into the running community, meeting lots of friends over time, and really the group is so marathon crazy that it sucked me into there. Like one thing led to another. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't long. I think I ran my first half in 5 months after I started running. And shortly after that, I was already signed up we accidentally got into the New York City Marathon via lottery. Wasn't planning on getting in. And next thing I know, I was running marathons.
One of the things that when I first started running, I thought when I was training, I'm running as fast as I can on every single train run. And I was getting a PR, but was starting to get sore and all this other stuff, and realized you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. But the beginner Danes make you very greedy in the beginning, and you're running everything at one speed. And really, that's the same thing with me. When I first started running, everything was like, I've got to run just around my 5K pace. And, for a long time, that was fine. And, but as the distances got a little further, I was able to slow it down a little bit. But really, in the beginning, one of the biggest mistakes I made was running too fast all the time. And it really
Yeah.
slowed my progress down in the beginning. You just can't run every single run at top speed because your top speed never goes up. And then you end up getting hurt. I eventually did get hurt after doing that for too long and like 2 years into running.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Injuries. Yeah. What'd you do? What happened?
So I think it's hard to say because you never know what really causes the injury, but I was training for, I guess it was my third marathon. I was training for Whistle Stop Marathon in late 2017 and training through the summer. And it was my first like real big buildup for a marathon. I don't remember if I was really trying to BQ at the time or not, but I was definitely trying to get my marathon time whittled down for my earlier marathon in 2017. But I think it was maybe a combination at the time of jumping into it too fast and overtraining. And I did take a pretty hard spill. I fell during the marathon cycle about a month and a half before the race. And like a week later, I could just feel it was a sacral stress reaction. And it took me out for 6 to 8 weeks. And it was a tough time. It's the longest injury that I've ever had to deal with. I've had little minor things here and there, but nothing's really ever taken me out that long. And I'm going to knock on wood real at any given. Yeah, I've been pretty lucky so far.
So you mentioned that you've run for almost 10 years and, can you talk a little bit about what it took why it sounds like I wouldn't say like peer pressured into it, but a lot of times whenever you run with a group that runs marathons, you get interested. I don't know what kind of got you into running your first marathon.
The first marathon, I've been promising my wife a trip to New York City for years and years. And that's for whatever reason, I don't even really remember the backstory, but we were talking about going to New York City and signing up for the New York City Marathon. And we figured we'll give it a shot. Probably not going to get in. Two of us got in via the lottery and two of us had to pay the hefty way in through one of the Marathon Tours programs. And we were able to get all four of us in as a group. But that's really what brought me into it. Look, after my first half, I really did fall in love with running. And the distance that the half brought really interested me in the full. And I'd watched over the first couple of years that I was running, just like watching like the Boston Marathon and watching the friends that I was meeting along the way. And I was really interested in it at the time. I never thought I'd make it. I never thought that this would be like this long time thing that I'd love so much and keep doing. But over time, little by little, the gains kept coming and things got a little bit more structured with me and whittled my times down after that.
You're a pretty focused dude. It's fun to watch. So my wife's run 11 Bostons and she's run, a lot of those kinds of things. So I get to go wherever she goes. So it's always fun. I've run some marathons, but I'm not I get tired of it. I was like, oh, this is just too much time and effort for me.
It is a time suck. I think I spend up to 10 hours a week training when I'm actually seriously focused on the marathon. Even right now for half, I think I'm still running like 8 hours a week. So it's a fair amount. It's time suck for sure. It's a lot of getting up early and it hurts.
So you've run all these impressive times and people can go to your website and we'll give that information out later. But let's talk a little bit about, look, you've run a lot, you've had a lot of experiences. What got you into coaching? So you're a coach now.
So the coaching came about. So look, I could talk about running all day.
Oh, that's why we're here.
Exactly, right? I could talk about running all day and I found myself, giving advice here and there. Hopefully it was unsolicited advice. Sorry, friends, if you got unsolicited advice from me in the past before. But I think about a year and change ago, I had a friend in the WRC that actually was asking me, hey, do you think that you would coach me? I'm trying to make a run for a BQ and I wouldn't mind if you gave it a shot. And at the time I was like, look, I'm not certified yet. I don't really have any prior coaching experience. I did have a coach for about a few months for one of my first BQ buildups. And over time I've really been self-coach and I've learned a lot along the way by reading a lot of books and everything else. So I was like, look, I'll take you on and we'll just see how this goes. And I know, pretty well what I'm doing within a certain range. I try not to take on people that are faster than me. I don't feel it's right for me to take on clients that are faster than me. I have a limit, which, hey, maybe I'm losing customers that way, but that's the way I see it. That's how I started. One friend reached out. He did really well for being my first client. He qualified for the Boston Marathon. Actually, he's going to be running it this coming April for 25. So that inspired me. I went out and got VDOT certified through the Jack Daniels coaching program. And I'm looking into more certifications in the future as well. But that's really what got me going. I've these clients since then. And it's been exciting. It's fun helping people. I'm never going to put my day job doing this, but it's fun. And
Not
it's
a lot of money
gratifying.
in it.
No, there isn't. But it's a gratifying experience. I can, tell people or I can help people out with what I love. And it's a lot of fun seeing people succeed and watching them grow as a runner. It's really cool. It's a fun experience.
If I were to call you today, and I said, Javier, look, I'm looking at trying to run. Let's just start off with the half marathon. I don't have any
Yep.
experience and things like that. I have goals. I think I can do a half marathon. What would you tell somebody like, and I want to hire somebody to help me get to there, and maybe I haven't had previous running experience.
Yeah. So
But
I actually do like a job interview. We set up a phone call and we talk about some folks, I may know them, some folks, and I'll know a little bit about their background and whatnot. But, if it's just somebody that's found me at random and I don't know your history, sometimes I'll see if you've got a Strava so I can spy on you a little bit and see what you've been doing. But really, I get a good idea of what your goals are. Do you just want to finish the half? Do you want to race the half? Do you have a time goal in mind? How much are you running a week right now? Have you already picked a race? That's one of the more complicated things I found with coaching is a lot of times people will come to you by the time they've already picked their race. Well, I only have a set amount of time that I can work with you to get you to your race. Yeah. So that's where like the setting realistic expectations about time goals and what we're looking at comes into play. Cause, when they've already got their race picked out, it's great. It's fantastic. But, now I have to square peg round hole. Like, all right, you've got a race. You've not been running very much the past 2 weeks. And now you've got a race in 8 weeks. Yeah, that's probably the toughest, but otherwise,
at
really,
least they give you 8 weeks. So
yeah. I prefer more. Full disclaimer, full disclosure, but it's really an interview. That a lot of it is just finding out your running history. If you've been injury prone, how many miles a week you're running today, how much time are you willing to commit? Because that's important too. Some folks only want to run 3 or 4 days a week, and that's fine, but you have to tailor it to that. Some folks love to be deep in the hurt locker and deep in pain, and you can push them really hard. And some folks just want to finish, relax.
I remember, so I run sometimes with Dallas Running Group and a bunch of other different clubs. I've learned that I just want to meet people, and the clubs that I run with doesn't matter. It's just about building the relationship with the running community. But
Yep.
I was running with this woman one time, and she had a lot of speed. She's run 5Ks, 10Ks, and even halves, but never ran a marathon. And she decided to run a marathon, and she was like, look, my goal is I'm going to make sure I get a BQ. I said, it's not that you don't have the talent, because you certainly had the talent. There's no doubt in my mind at some point she's going to Boston. You know what I mean? I said, just remember, like, let's put expectations. Let's set the right expectations. One was like, running marathons isn't just, hey, you run one marathon and you're going to hit this time necessarily. In general, you don't. I'm not saying it never happens.
It's
but
rare.
It takes time to get to that. If it's a marathon, certainly to a speed that is it just takes time and effort to get there. It's like your body has to adjust over the years. And I don't think people are that patient a lot of times, in my opinion. And maybe halves are like that. Halves are a little different to me, maybe because I ran so many, but I think you can get there a lot faster in a half than you do full.
I think the half is a lot more forgiving. I think my biggest thing is with the marathon is you got to respect the distance, or the distance will very quickly disrespect you. Because half, you can almost get away with, not that I recommend it, but you can almost get away with a bad fueling plan, a short training cycle. It's still a hard and big accomplishment. The marathon is just a totally different beast, and the training and the fueling and everything else. There's so many things that have to go right to have a good day in the marathon, and training is a huge part of it. But your sleep and the weather that day, how does your stomach feel when you wake up? Well, there's so much that goes in. But you bring up a good point about people that folks will have a goal already in mind. And that is, I think, from the coaching perspective, one of the harder things I have to work with is someone will say, hey, look, this is my second marathon. 45 minutes away from my BQ time on my last marathon, but I really want to BQ this time. And really, I think the best thing that I can do as a coach is be honest and set expectations early on and not self-fault. Because you have to be able to hit certain milestones before you can hit that main goal of the marathon. It's not, are you ready for this? And what does your training look like before that? Because there's some folks that, they can BQ maybe easily on their first shot. They're naturally talented, but it takes time. And I appreciate when folks give me a little bit more time to work with them to get them there. And I just, through the coaching certifications that I've done, it's very calculated. There's some pretty simple math and some pretty simple formulas that say, you need to run an XYZ before you can run an XYZ marathon along with it, distance to go along with it. So I tend to give people like checkpoints. Yeah. Let's say you want to break 4 hours in the marathon, right? Yeah. generally speaking, there's that old rule, take your half marathon time and add 10 minutes, and that's ballpark. And it's rough math, right? And that depends on your training, but that's been the biggie for me is like setting up real expectations for folks.
So a couple more questions around your coaching style is one of the things that I believe, and you can completely disagree because I don't know what your coaching style is. So, but is if I have a goal race, let's say my goal race is 8 months from now, 9 months or whatever, and I've never really raced much. My thinking is, hey, you should put some 5Ks or 10Ks inside that 6 or 8 month window to get race ready. And I think that because you want to know what it feels like on race day because,
Absolutely.
hey, I might have to go to the bathroom. I might have to do these things beforehand, or I should carry some gels. There's a lot of things, my opinion, is to think about. And if I haven't run a race in 6 months, which just happened like this weekend, I ran a race. It was a 5K and a 10K at the same time. Yeah, thanks. It's been like 5 or 6 months since I even ran a race at all. And I was like, oh man, I almost forgot what this is about. But for those that don't run a lot of races, what do you think about 6, 8, 12 months out when they have a goal race?
I 100% agree. Getting the pre-race jitters out of the way. And really the best way to figure out how you're going to do at your goal race is to do little checkpoints along the way. So honestly, the first thing you should probably do is a 5K. Let's see, like a 5K time trial is like how I base your paces. So if you run whatever 25-minute 5K, I can say, I can expand that out and say, all right, run your tempos at this pace, run your long runs at this pace, run your easy pace at this pace. And then you do a next checkpoint. All right, you ran a 5K, you ran a 10K a little way later on. Let's see how your progression. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of racing along the way because pre-race jitters, practicing, even me, like I'll go several months without racing. And like before a goal race, I will definitely jump on and get on a pacing gig, just that having a bib on and having those race day morning nerves and getting them out of your system and going through those jitters is a big deal. So 100% a proponent of racing a fair amount.
Pacing is so fun. I haven't done it in a little bit, but I used to do it a lot. And it's okay. I felt like I was pretty good at pacing certain, like a 150 or something like that, but it's always fun to get people riled up, excited, during kind of the race and then watch them accomplish it, right? They beat you at the end or, they get their goal time.
You set them free and tell them to sprint.
Go. What are you doing here still?
Yeah, go. You're talking too much. Leave me.
You shouldn't be talking. You're way faster than talking right now. When you look at, because I believe that, and I'm not saying I'm going to be really great at this, but I believe that you got to do more than just running to really, especially as you get older, to keep the body moving, right? So whether it's weights or core stuff or whatever, how do you incorporate some of that, or do you, into the training? Because I know you do a lot of that stuff.
I do some strength training, probably not as much as I should. I think it's the hardest balance ever is throwing 8 to 10 hours a week of running and then also finding the energy to lift and everything else. I tried. I'm not the best at it. If folks have the time and the bandwidth, what I like to say is keep your hard days hard and your easy days easy. If you have a pretty hard run and you're mixing, some folks want to do heavy legs. I'm like, all right, you're going to have to put it one day where you already have your legs beat up and it's a give and take. What do you want to be good at? Do you want to be good at running or do you want to lift heavy weights?
Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
You're going to have a leg day. I say throw it on the tempo day. I do leg days sometimes on long run days. It's out of the way. It gives me the weekend to recover and I bounce back from that. But really, for the sake of recovery, really running super, super slow, easy recovery runs is super important to me. Doing all the foam rolling and having a sports chiropractor in your back pocket isn't a bad idea either. It's important to me to keep those things in check before the body starts hurting. And look, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Like I don't sit around in some level of pain and all moment at any given day. It's just a master's runner now. So it takes its toll, man.
I'm not sure that it's really fair sometimes when you start looking at a 40-year-old versus a 60-year-old and that's still considered masters, but I think they really should start thinking of grandmasters in every big race.
I'll appreciate that when I'm at that age.
Yeah. You're going to be that age. We all will. And so what's your go-to races in the Dallas-Fort Worth area? What would you say you really love, some of your good races that you love?
So local races, I love the DRC half. I've been able to race it and pace it at this time. Dallas is always a fun weekend. You can always get a great cheer squad. Everyone in the city's there, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So Dallas half. I've actually never run the Dallas full and it's on my agenda at some point, but I am running the Dallas half this year. The YMCA Turkey Trot, that's always one of my favorites.
Have you ever done Cowtown?
I had done Cowtown. It was actually my second marathon.
Oh, wow.
I've just done twice. My second marathon, and I paced it the full marathon in 2023 on a build up to
Do
Boston.
you pace a lot of marathons?
Actually, funny story. That was the first pacing gig was
Okay.
the Cowtown Marathon. And we used it as I had a 24-mile training run, and they needed
Oh,
paces for a certain pace group, and I was like,
might as well.
let's go do it. So me and KG, shout out to Kieran, paced the 310 group that year, and it was a lot of fun. And then
Oh, pace of 310. Oh my God.
we need to drop that. I'm sorry.
Man, I love it. No, I don't. Look, I think that no matter your speed and that you should be proud of it, right? To me, that's amazing. A 310 that you can pace. But you know what? You can go run a 4 hour, 4:30, whatever marathon. That's great.
Like,
We're all different speeds and we're all different in reality, we're all different, right? So
yeah.
I think that we just have to understand that. But I think it's awesome that you and Karen just one day go pace just because you got to do a long run.
Yeah, it was a long run for sure. But no, and I've paced a few races since, DRC half being one of them. And then I actually recently paced Tour de Flor on a very warm,
Yeah, that's a tough
warm
one.
day.
I feel like that one's always warm.
It is. I've run the quarter marathon twice, and it never goes quite the way I want it to.
I remember last year I raced 3 or 4 half marathons in the summer, and I thought I was going to die, right?
Yeah,
Like
I won't do it.
literally, I will not, I don't think I'll race another half. I'll do some 5Ks maybe, but I'm not going to race a half marathon during the summer because it makes me feel like I'm super slow and everything else. And I actually ran my fastest half marathon in September on a downhill race in Utah. But
Okay.
anyways, the point is, yeah, it was last year. That's not this year.
Yeah, well,
It is what it is.
hey, my PRs are about a year and a half old now, so I better not totally. My marathon PR is about a year and a half old.
Well, I was looking at your
better
5K
run one.
time, and that was like 4 years ago.
No, I ran a 5K. Oh, my 5K PR. Yeah, it's a little old.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting any
2020.
younger. I don't plan on that PR getting any faster anytime soon, unless I
5Ks are tough, man.
break through.
Yeah, unless you're really just training and look, you're super speedy. Can you give so let's go back to the coaching and training and things like that. So tell me a little bit about like how you would get somebody. So let's say I call you up and we're doing the training and stuff like that, and I have some injuries and things. How would you tell me? What would you tell me to? It probably depends, but any kind
I mean,
of
if you've got some injuries, I want to know from your doctor that you're cleared to run, and don't lie to me. That's the biggie, right? Because if you start running and you're half injured and you're coming into this, you're just going to get injured again. It's hard to get started when you're already limping on one foot. But what was the rest of the question? Sorry.
No, I think that's good. One question I do think, and that I think is important is, so it's funny because sometimes I use different things to motivate me. It could be, a David Goggins thing or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's never enough, right? Like I feel like motivation is just an emotional kind of thing. And some the things I hear a lot is, I'm not motivated. I'm not motivated. What do you tell people that? What do you tell people that say that kind of stuff?
Folks that aren't motivated, they don't typically reach out to a coach, if I'm going to be honest with you. But if they're having a hard time getting out the door, I just got to remind them, hey, what is the goal that you have in mind for the race? This cycle's only temporary. There's some sacrifices involved in it.
Javier, you know what I would tell them? I'd be
Yeah.
like, look, if you're trained, it's just like life in general. This is what I believe. It's running or you're trying to get a promotion at work or whatever. Sometimes motivation is not enough, right? It's
Yeah.
doing the work. It's focusing in on the things that you have to do on a consistent and daily basis. And that's running. You want to run a marathon? You get out there and do the work. My wife tells me all the time, she goes, I just go out and do it. I'm not motivated to do it. I just go do it. And so I think that to me, that's really the way to look at it, right?
Really, and the other thing too, like the whole community thing is a big deal, right? Some
I
people
agree.
are not motivated to get out the door by themselves at all. And look, I mean, I will go out there and grind solo. I don't love it. The days that are the hardest to get up are the day that I'm going to go, run a workout at the lake, 5:30 in the morning, and there's not a peep out there, and it's me, my light, my thoughts, going through my brain and my anxiety when my workout starts. But really, if you're having trouble with getting out the door, the best thing I can recommend anybody is find a running group. There's a bunch of running groups. Your website itself has a ton of resources for all the different running groups here in Dallas. There's a run group for everyone out here. There's the kids call it run club now, right? There's running groups for 3 to 4 miles. If that's all you want to do, run 5Ks, 3, 4 miles, have fun with friends. That's great. And then you have all sorts of different groups all the way throughout DRC, WRC, Pegasus, the Slofts. And they're all out there for all different levels of skill, really. And you'll meet someone that might be your buddy that'll get you out the door. They'll be your text accountability buddy. And that's, God knows I haven't.
1000%. And so I'm glad you said that, because I think community is key for most of us. That's why you see these really big running groups. Hey, I think that's a big one. And I like the accountability partners. The beauty about that is I could call some people up today and just say, hey, so-and-so, I'm going to go run on Tuesday and Wednesday. Can you come and run with me one of these days or whatever? And like, I've been starting to try to come to the Tuesday and Wednesday groups that you guys have, right? Like for speed workout. And it's just there to keep me accountable to, hey, I need to do summer. Like it's, I don't want to continue to do this by myself. I think that is extremely important.
Big.
I love that.
The door.
Yeah. When you look at one thing I'm interested in is, what does your diet look like? How do you manage that throughout the day? From a
diet. They say you can't outrun a bad diet, and that is somewhat true. That's a tough one for me because I don't have the best diet in the world. I try to eat pretty clean dinner.
I see you on Facebook sometimes and you're like passed out on the ground with,
hey. Yeah, I do like to have fun. I do not let running take over my life.
Nothing wrong with that.
I very much enjoy my Saturday nights, and then I will not sit here.
Love that. Love that.
I try to eat.
The thing is, have fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, most of us do not do this for a living.
Exactly.
It's not my day job. So I'm going to live life a little bit too, and as well as my friends. But yeah, I don't know. My diet's okay. It's not great. It's not bad. I do think that I outrun it a little bit for the most part. My favorite food?
Yeah. What do you?
I will tell you that my favorite pre-race meal and pre-long run meal is always going to be pizza. So I will pizza.
Yeah.
I will not lie. Other than that, I'm a heavy meat and potatoes guy. So steak will always make me happy.
Yeah, I love steak. It's definitely. Do you cook yourself, or do you just go out a lot?
No, we eat at home a fair amount. We go out on the weekend, one night a week here or there, but for the most part, we try to eat at home.
All right,
that helps keep it a little healthier.
Yeah, it does. This way, you don't get these burgers. Look, I love a good burger, but man, I can't eat a ton of those things anymore
because they also come along with French fries.
Yeah, like every Wednesday, I take my son to Gloria's and I'll eat fish, but before the fish, I eat a bunch of chips. I'm just, oh my God.
This is the thing is about all the social running groups. If you're not careful, you end up at a social run every night and you're eating junk food and drinking beer every night. And I actually had to stop going to so many social runs after a while. I was like, I'm just being counterproductive in my own diet and you're on running at this point.
So we have this group. It's a social run group called DDR, and we meet on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
And we meet at Norbuck Park. And supposedly we get out there and run, but generally we don't. We just sit there and have beers or whatever you might drink. Yeah. Like I'll do my running or workout, in the morning, knowing that I'm not but it's just for me to hang out. There are other runners,
That's us at Taco Joint after we finish our long runs at the co-op on Saturday mornings. We hang out there for hours afterwards, having mimosas and tacos.
I'd have to join you guys every now and then for that.
You really should. It's a good time on Saturday.
Yeah. I think I'm going to. I've been thinking about it. So when you look at the vision or not really the vision, but when you look at the future for you, do you have a future goal of, some people want to run all 6 major marathons or whatever. Do you have any kind of particular marathons that you want to go after? Or?
Not really. I'm still PR chasing right now. So I'm looking at races that are typically more convenient for PRs. Granted, mine is I'm not on the easiest course in the world because my PR is over at Boston. Yeah. I'm still PR chasing. I love CIM in Sacramento. It's a favorite race of mine that I'll probably go back to one of these days. All 3 domestic majors under my belt already. And at some point, I think I might chase the international ones. I'm just not big on my priority list right now. I do think it'd be fun, but I do see people go through the travel nightmares of going overseas for a marathon and putting all their cars and all their training into it. And then they have a bad travel day or they get sick. And it's, man, I don't maybe later when I'm not
It's a
chasing
lot of
PR.
effort to get sick or something. And
There's so many variables when you go out of the country and like time zone changes and it's hard. I see people like really struggle with it sometimes. Some people do great. Don't get me wrong. It's not where my head's at right now, but there's some other good races that I haven't done yet that I look forward to doing. I might be doing like, actually Eugene is one that it's been high on my list of races that I would love to do.
Oregon, yeah.
So that would be awesome. But those are the marathons of mine. I'm not a every year Boston repeater, although I do love running Boston, and I'm sure I'll be back again soon enough.
Yeah, you're not one that cares to necessarily just do it every single year. Like
Yeah,
Kieran.
no,
And he's
the
obsessed.
funny thing is, yeah, Kieran, I should give him a little help because he said he wasn't going to run it this year and
Yeah, I know.
lined up for it.
But he's gonna do London. He's gonna
Like, he
do
lied, man.
yeah, my wife's doing the same thing though, right?
Yeah.
Like she's gonna do Boston and then London like the next week. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot. I probably won't go to London, but I'll go to Boston.
Right. And I'm not going to lie. Like, I would love to do Boston every year because as soon as it comes around, it's like FOMO
Yeah.
as soon as everyone leaves. So I would love to do it. It's just my wallet and my vacation time.
It's
I
highly
think of doing it
expensive.
every single year. Yeah.
It's highly expensive, and if you can do it, then I'd recommend it. It's a lot of times it's just a once in a lifetime thing for somebody.
Yeah. I get it.
Uh,
Some people are one and done with it. And I love it. I think it's an amazing experience. It's still my favorite race to date. I'll never forget like my first Boston and my second Boston.
When's the last time you did Boston?
23.
It's not that long ago.
I trained my heart and soul out for that marathons.
Yeah.
I, and I haven't run a
phenomenal,
marathon
dude.
since.
Yeah. I remember my last marathon I ran probably like 2017 or 2018. And I was talking to my wife and I said,
Which one was it?
was it Dallas? Yeah, I think it was Dallas.
Okay.
And a month or two after talking to my wife, and I'm always complaining about the training and just doing it. She goes, Chris, you don't really have to do a marathon. I was like, yeah, that's true. She goes, why don't you just focus on halves? And I never did another marathon again.
I was about to ask you, when am I going to drag you out to do another full again?
I don't know. I don't know that you can. I've done several, like I've done 50Ks. I've done like, my wife and I will go into the Colorado mountains, do these 6-day trips where there's 25 mountain miles up, like for 6 days straight. We're doing 25 miles, not every day, but maybe 3 or 4 days going up and down mountains, which is brutal. I'll do stuff like that, but man, running the marathons have just been just ball breaking to me. Like I've done 3 and one of them I did pace, funny enough, which was only a 4:30, which I was like, okay, and even that was hard. And so
Grind.
yeah, I think the training for me is the grind. And so I don't know. But so last question for you. So as you look at giving advice to maybe somebody new that's starting to run, whether 5K or wanting to train, what would be your advice to get into running and things like that?
I think the tried and true couch to 5K plan is amazing for new runners, especially if you haven't run a mile yet. Don't try to go out there and run a mile the first time. Walk dog intervals are clutch. That's what I used. I swear I started on couch to 5K and it worked. And it gives you that flexibility to try it over and over again and repeat weeks if you want to. But I think at first, just focus on running. You don't need to focus on speed work and the track and everything else. That's a great way to get hurt right off the bat and burn out. The first thing that you should really do is just run and run more and just get your body used to that, just general running, and don't worry about pace. Just get out there, run, have fun with it. The track and the gains and the tempos and all the rest of that'll come later soon enough. But I mean, I think the most important thing is just get out there and run and start logging some miles and just take care of your body on the way too. Don't try to jump up too fast. Try not to sign up for your marathon within 3 months of starting to run. That's a really bad idea.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. I don't recommend it. I'll help you get there if you really want to, but I really don't recommend it. It's a good way to get hurt right off the bat. And I think that's the hardest part, right? When you're starting out, like there are a lot of little aches and pains that come with running that eventually do go away. That's a good segue to another point.
Yeah.
The aches and pains do eventually go away, right? All this beginner runner pain, like shin splints and knee pain and everything else, you got to take care of them, but they will eventually get better. The side stitches, all that stuff does go away. It comes with experience. And a lot of people are like, oh man, I can't run because my knees hurt or my shins hurt or I get side stitched. Like just stick with it. It's going to get better. It's the only way you get better at running is by running more.
Here's what I think is the more you do it and the more people you're around, and going back to that community aspect, I learned a lot just being around runners. Like,
Yeah.
kind of shoes they wore, what kind of socks and shirts and things like that, and I learned a ton. So I definitely think one is if you're going to start running, maybe get with a group. I remember too, is when I started running, there was no groups that I knew of because I lived in Little back in the day and there was no groups there. And I just started running. And one of the things I did was I said, for 1 week, I'm going to run a mile for the next 5 days. And I can run the first time. And then at the end of on Friday, I want to get to where I can jog the whole thing. Yep. And I got to that. And then, over time, I remember my brother, he comes in, he was in the Air Force and he goes, "Hey man, I'm going to do a 5K. He goes, "You got to do it with me." And I was like, no, I don't know if just do it. Let's go. And so I did it and I did fine. That's where it just revved up the engine when sometimes you just sign up for a 5K and give yourself a month.
That's where it starts. I think the 5K is the gateway drug of running. And it's a really great place to start. But I think you made a good point, right? Ask questions. What do we say at the beginning of this? Runners love talking about running. So ask someone that's chatty and just ask them a lot of the questions that we talked about today. How did you get started? What would you do? What shoes do you wear? How do you fuel? How do you run? What's your training like? How many miles a week do you do? How fast should I start mileage? All those questions, those are all the questions that I asked when I first started. So.
That is something that, and I was going to stop it, but I'm going to keep going a little bit if you don't mind. Is there specific gear that I assume that you really, whether it's shoes or shirts or I don't know, do you listen to music and all that kind of stuff?
You will normally find me covered in Tracksmith clothing. So that's my go-to apparel. Shoes, I tend to run in Sauconys quite a bit. Endorphin Speeds, Endorphin Pros. I've got a shoe, it seems like, for every purpose, easy days, hard days, tempo days. And I will admittedly run in Nike Vaporflies for all my racing. So that really, I don't have a whole lot of gadgets. I don't have a lot of stuff around. Of course, I got my Garmin.
Yeah. I tried the Apple Watch for a little while and I was like, no, man, I just like my Garmin. That's way better.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised how many newer runners actually do have an Apple Watch and have to get all of them used to helping them out with that. It's definitely a little bit different because I'm like, where's the lap button? Does my workout push out to your Apple Watch? How does this work? And it does work 100%. Several runners that have Apple Watches and it's totally okay.
Yeah, I decided not to use the Apple Watch because I really wanted to because it's a cool watch. But for running, for me, it was like, I'm used to the lap button. I'm used to whenever I was doing speed work, I can just push a button rather than go to the screen and, oh my God, and mess me up. And I tried it for 6 months. And then I started wearing 2 watches. And then I was like, screw this. I'm wearing my.
I feel like Garmin's have come such a long way too. I remember my first Garmin was no notifications, nothing crazy. And now, going to basically what feels like an Apple Watch on my wrist anyways. I don't feel like I'm missing out. Hell, my latest watch has a full GPS map.
I always buy the best Garmin, whenever, and I keep them for 5 years-ish because then it dies.
Yeah.
And I don't use half the shit that's on it.
I just have a fancy running watch that can do a lot of things more than running. I think this one could do golf and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I'm sure this can too, but it lasts forever. And I don't have to I could go run 3 races within 4 weeks and it still has some juice left. That's how awesome this Garmin is.
Yeah. I love it. I wouldn't go any other way. I think I'm on my 3rd Garmin at this point. So
yeah,
every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. That's about when it happens. My wife's kind of on her last, her Garmin she's had for 5 years. So I don't know how she runs way more than I do. I don't know how it stayed alive. Is there a particular store that you like within Dallas?
I think my go-to whenever I need something locally is I typically go to Luke's and see if they have.
We all do. Yeah.
That's my go-to. I mean, they've been an anchor in the running community for so long. So typically my go-to. They're usually close by to where I'm running from also. So
I remember when they were almost bankrupt. I don't know if you remember 4 years ago, 5.
Yeah, when the stores closed down. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, man, they're just rocking. Every time I go in there, I talk to, I forget his name, but he's the owner, he's the GM there. And he's like, man, I'm impressed every time.
Yeah, they had a really good bounce back, especially because we've had so many major companies come in and take out Run On, Fleet Feet and everyone. And Fleet Feet's great and everything, but they're huge companies that come in and take over. So to see a smaller family-owned business stick around and survive the worst of it really and bounce back and I think hosting group runs from the stores and all that, it's always really
absolutely
great way to get people in the door.
Yeah, they do.
Whenever I go out of town, I'll look for, see if there's a running store that has a local, that's to see if I can get in. Of course, I never can, but
I remember one time I went to overseas. Where'd I go? I went to Belfast and I was like, I got to run a race. And so I found this race online and went to it. And it was a trail race. And I won the trail race. Got there
Nice.
on a Friday or got there for late Friday, went there Saturday morning, took an Uber ish. And I had to figure out how to get home or back home. But that was really hard. I had found a taxi. But point is, I won that race. And then I looked on Facebook groups for, I know I'm completely going off here, but for a group that to watch the Dallas Cowboys because there's no fell there, right? But in
Yeah.
some places you can. And I found this group in the middle of town, and I walked over there to the middle of town and hung out with all these guys, got a little tipsy with them,
Mhm.
and just dude. So I mean, I think community is helpful in anywhere you go, and so I'm not sure if they had any running there, besides what I did.
I've yet to do a race out of the country, so I think every once in a while, like I'll see one and I'll be like, find like a 5K here to knock out real quick.
It all depends, right? Generally, when my wife and I go outside of the U.S., then it's probably either we signed up for a race, like she went to Berlin, and we did this thing in France and stuff like that a month or so ago, and it was to do the mountains and run there. So usually we'll do like a running trip, or if not, we'll just run during the trip instead of
Yeah.
making it a running trip. So I think you have to plan that out if you're gonna do like a 5K, 10, whatever,
Yeah. I do think that running in different cities is like the best way to see a city.
Yeah,
Like I just
completely
did.
agree.
I just ran in Philly and got to do like the Philly steps, the Rocky statue, like things I probably wouldn't have driven out of my way to follow
Sure.
the conference. But like, I was like, oh, Rocky statue. I'll just jump in and take a photo with that.
How do you
Um,
do that whenever you go? Because you travel a little bit for work, so
yeah.
that's a good question. How do you just plan out a route or two and then
Yeah. So I'll look at heat maps and whatnot and see if I can figure it out. Strava's got all these. I mean, you got to be a paid subscriber now, but like you can
yeah.
basically say, I want to run like 8 miles from
Hmm.
here and it'll generate a route for you. But I try to look for running trails and whatnot if I could find them. If not, I'll wing it. Haven't gotten myself into very many sketchy situations winging it so far. But yeah, I was just running
Right.
in. Yeah, I know. Just went right at Anaheim the past 2 weeks or so when I went on a work trip and it wasn't the most scenic running I've ever done. But I've had the luck of having some built-in running conference buddies in the
Well,
field.
that's good.
So it's been awesome.
That's usually what I'll do is I'll find some guys that are really good that run and then they're really good at directions. And I'm like, hey, Luke, we're going to here. Do you get a place for us to run? He goes, yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. A
So,
lot of times I end up having to pull out my phone and figure out where the hell I'm at because I get lost or the route that I had planned had a fork in the road and I took the wrong fork.
you definitely got
Um,
to carry your phone. I would recommend that, especially if you're going to keep your own.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're on your own in the dark at 5 in the morning in an unknown city, you might want to take your phone just in case you end up
Boy.
10 miles. You went out 10 miles instead of 5.
Is there anything that you wanted to cover that we missed?
I don't think so. I think this has been awesome so far. So what's your favorite race you've ever done? Well, I'll ask you one question at least.
Yeah, no. In Dallas, Cowtown has been probably one of my favorites over the years, just because I don't know, the crowd, it's somewhat of a smaller race, but it feels really big. I've done that probably 8 or 9 times, the half marathon. And now Dallas is starting to become really fun to me. Maybe because I know the race director and some people there, but that's, the crowd support is huge now. I think 10, 12 years ago, it was a little bit different. It just felt like it was, I don't want to say it was dying, but it just didn't feel like it was growing. But then now I feel like, man, they're doing all kinds of things. They're doing some 5Ks in different areas before the
Mhm.
races and they're selling out like crazy. And so they're doing a lot of fun things now that I really like and enjoy. So
Whole weekend series out of I've done the 5K and the 10K on the Saturday instead of doing so I can actually just go and spectate on Sunday and get the racing out of the way. I've definitely done them both. They're all a good time. It's great.
and I would say one more that I did this weekend and it's really small. It's called El Gras. It's Lake Grapevine, something. And it was cool because they had this, you could do a 5K. And then when you're finished with the 5K, then you go do a 10K. So it pushes you to really, I don't know if I recommend like going to do that a lot, but it does push you to go run 2 races.
Yeah.
They have some local vendors there and things like that. And I just thought it was just fun. It's
Is it a
very
trail
small.
race or a road race?
No, it's a road race. They
Okay.
do it every year the last several years. Yeah, it's just super. it's hard to know about it if you don't know about it.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it's in Grapevine. And so if you're in Dallas, it's a little drive over there. But so that was just the atmosphere was cool. It's like a trail race atmosphere, but it's just in a park and you run on the road most of
Okay.
it. So pretty cool. So how does somebody get a hold of you? If somebody want to, hey, look, I want Javier to be my coach or call him, where do they go?
So a few different ways. I've got a website and my email, of course, but my website is jtendurance.com. Let me double check that that's actually right. Yep, jtendurance.com. It's not web. You can find me on Instagram on at jtendurancetraining. And then my email is jtendurancetraining@gmail.com. But the
Well,
website
Javier,
is great. You can fill out the form and all that fun stuff, and it gives me a record of where you're at. So it helps out. I've got some forms to fill out there too.
I feel like you made some progress on your website. So the last time I looked was, I don't know, when you first came out. And then I looked
Mhm.
today, I was like, oh, wow, this looks even better. So nice
It's a
work.
functional website now. I think I sat on it for a few months because I just didn't have time to get around. I had a loading page for I think 3 or 4 months. I bought the domain. I did the logo. Yeah, yeah. So I went ahead and finally finished the design after getting motivated. There's a motivation thing.
Yeah, maybe for that, that's a little different. You could turn on some music and then get motivated a little bit and push yourself a few hours to do it. All right. Well, Javier, thank you so much for coming on to our first episode of DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and please don't forget to rate and review us. That is so important for all the algorithms and Apple and Spotify and everything else. So thanks, Javier, for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right.